Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda.
And I'm Jake Bennett, enjoying a wonderful Arnold Palmer light half and half iced tea
An
lemonade.
actual Armand Palmer. Arnold. Uh, and welcome to episode 171 of the North Meet South web podcast.
There it is. We're back.
I've returned. I have a follow up. I have a follow up.
All right, let's hear your follow up
statement.
to your most recent rant.
So last episode, I said this coach is no good. He needs to go. We need to dismiss him. What the club has actually done in the meantime is formally announced his succession plan. So this year will be his 12th, 13th, and final year at the club, and then he will ride off into the sunset. They've already signed the next coach. They have signed the next coach. It's already they've given him a 3-year contract. So
I'll believe it when I see it. I just have a feeling somehow he's going to find his way back into coaching again.
Considering how things have gone over the last 12 years, it would not surprise me if something changes his mind. Because there was lots of fluff that came out of the club, lots of blowing hot air, and he's the right man, and he's still passionate for it, and he's excited, and we're like, the thing that ires me most, and I've been enjoying the word ire the last couple of weeks.
I like that. That's a good one.
The thing that raises my ire above all else is that after all of these, failure to capitalize on the best list we've ever had and the best players we've ever had and all of that, we will be deprived of the coach being sacked. He's just going to be allowed to walk off into the sunset. So
you wanted there to be some shame associated.
I want fireworks. Right? I want shame. Yeah, he's just such a good guy, and everyone loves him, and all of it. No, look. Hopefully, we had 2 of our key defenders get injured, so they'll be a little bit undercooked if they make the start of the season anyway, which is in like 4 weeks from now. So hopefully, we'll just lose badly in the early stages,
and then everybody can just be really mad at him, and he can get the firing he deserves.
That's right. Just usher him out. So. Anyway, we'll see what happens.
Oh, man. Well, I wish the worst for you then, my friend. I hope it goes terribly, and I hope he gets just shamed into oblivion, and that there's, no honor for him leaving on a good season.
We'll certainly boo him every chance we get.
Make him suffer. I'm just kidding. But, well, I wish I had a rant to follow with. I think I could. Let me see. Can I cook something up? Has there been anything bothering me recently? I think that one of the things that I could have a rant about would be when you build things for people and then they don't use them, and then they come back and they say, "Hey, could you build this feature?" And you mean the one I built for you like 6 months ago? That one? Is that the one you're talking about? But sometimes even worse, and I'm ranting about this like this is a thing. It is a thing. It's happened before, but it hasn't happened recently. But what has happened recently is when you build a feature and you're like, okay, we're going to release it for feedback. Like I feel like we're far enough along. This has some value to it, but it's not like in its final form, but I want to get some feedback on it, right? And so you've released it to the world and you say, okay, guys, go play with it. Whatever, and a month goes by and you come back and nobody's used it yet, but by golly, they have changes for you. Like, there's literally not one record in the database yet that they've used the tool, but they're like, I think the reason why we didn't use it is because it would be really nice if it actually had this feature. It's like, use the tool, and then tell me about what else you want. Like, you haven't even tried it yet. Oh man, that's just makes your blood boil. I don't know. Maybe I'm in a small, Michael, I feel like you and I don't know. I'm trying to like evaluate the landscape here. Are the vast majority of people that are listening to this, nobody's listening to this, but is the vast majority of people listening to this, are they, people who work on a specific product for like, a long time? Is it like, do you have internal users? Do you have customers? Or, or is it like agency sort of work? Because in the case that it's agency work, like who gives a crap? Like if they haven't used it, like you're getting paid to do the thing. It doesn't matter. And I mean, in some sense, like I could say the same thing about myself. Like I'm getting paid to do it. Who cares? Why are you complaining about it? But it's like, I feel like for me, like I'm serving our internal users for a lot of what we're doing. And so It does like irk you when you sort of go out there and build this feature that maybe you didn't have time for in the first place, and then it's
Yeah.
like, hey, we want more changes to that thing. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You just need to use it. Just use the
it,
thing.
and then we'll figure out from there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my only rant. That's all I got. That's as what's the word?
It's as ruffled as your feathers get.
Yeah, like on Lego Movie 2, this is the thing. Well, she's brooding. That's what it is.
Brooding.
She's brooding. She's like, you gotta get dark and moody and like a brood session, a good brood session. So that's as brooding as I get. That's about as far as it goes. So anyway, you had some stuff that you messaged about. Not often do we get on this and have like a bunch of stuff that we've got queued up to talk about. Usually it's just kind of whatever bubbles to the surface. But you came prepared today, so I'm gonna let you take the floor. Let's see what you got.
Cool. So, and I want to know what you think about this if you've been in this situation before, which I think maybe you might have given the kind of work that you do in your day job, and maybe if any listeners have been in a similar situation. Essentially, we have this quoting platform where we have a panel of, dozens of lenders that we integrate with that will quote, that are on the panel, that we can send our brokers' customers to for loans to buy things, cars, property, tools, whatever. Not all of the lenders that are on our panel provide an API integration to quote for loans. Not all of the lenders that provide APIs provide endpoints to make quotes. Sometimes they just provide us endpoints to send a loan application, and it goes into their system, and then you use their system to do whatever we need to do. So the tool, the platform that we built, that we use, essentially provides an abstraction over all of these different lenders, and we create business rules based on those lenders' requirements in order to basically provide a normalized view of what the monthly repayments would be, what the fees would be, what the broker fees would be, what the establishment fees, like all of this stuff. And so for each lender, a lot of this is very manual. Once a week, they will send us, or once a month, they will send us an email. Who that email goes to, I found out this morning, could vary in the business. It could go from a lender's BDM, business development manager, to one of our business development managers. Sometimes they send it to our head of HR for some reason. Sometimes it goes to our head of operations. We're trying to standardize that so everything kind of goes into one place, which will then create a ticket in ClickUp, which will then get processed. But the format of all of these naturally is different. Like sometimes it's just one person emailing, here's our updated rates. Sometimes it's our updated rate is this, and here is a PDF with like all of the additional details. Sometimes it's like a mailing list that just gets blasted out and passed around. So it is then the job of someone on our team to go through that PDF or that email and figure out what's changed and provide us. We've got like this master spreadsheet, which has all the formulas in it, all of the values and things like that, which we then put into the platform and then code it up. And then we make sure that, like, given all of the same inputs, we get all the same outputs for all of the different scenarios. So there's like 20 or 30 scenarios. Now, you would write an automated test for all of these scenarios. Great. That's fine. It passes today. But then in a week, when we get the new rates...
Sorry, real quick. When you say, okay, so you're saying you have automated tests for all these scenarios, meaning like, give me 3 of them. What are the scenarios?
Well, say it's like an individual person that is purchasing a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes it's a joint application, so a husband and wife purchasing something. Or it's what we call like a sole trader, like someone who works for themselves effectively as a contractor, and they need to buy a new computer. So they would put in a loan for that. Like, so there's all these different situations.
And so you'd say, like, if given that these are the circumstances under which they're asking for a loan in, they should get rates and things of this type from this particular broker.
Yeah. So from each of these lenders, like this lender, lender A, B, C, D, let's say. So A and C are like, yep, we can provide you a quote. B gets knocked out, you don't meet some eligibility criteria, and D is like, we don't offer that kind of finance. So great, this is fine. But the problem with this is that these rates change, right? week to week or month to month or whatever the frequency is for different lenders. The rules might change for different lenders. So we're always in there. We're making changes to the code when the rules change. But the problem with automated testing is that the inputs change. So in a general test, you're saying, given this is the world that I build, these are the values that come out the other side. So you can make assertions and expectations around that kind of stuff. But the problem with these tests is that the expectations will change depending on like the business logic changing for a specific lender periodically, or the values will change. You know, how much they'll lend or what the repayment fee will be will change based on data that comes in. Sometimes some parts of this system are user managed by our internal staff that go in and say, okay, we need to go and update the base rates. You know, it changed from 9% to 8%, or it went from, 8.5% to 9.25%. These things happen in real time without our intervention. And that, like, these are just rate changes. They're not changes in behavior. So in order for us to be able to determine that the system is working, we need real-time data to say, like, yes, the current state of the world is accurate based on these inputs. So I guess where this comes into play, and ultimately my question is, how would you build an automated test system or automated suite of tests for this system that requires real-time values that come external to the system and can be changed by anyone at any time? So we don't know that it's correct. And I think a lot of the base rate calculations are simple enough, but when the logic to determine whether or not someone is eligible for a particular lender may change. And so
that for me seems like the most challenging part. And I think the idea too that, like, the way that our brains are stuck thinking about it is typically in this like unit test world where we're used to running it sort of in isolation. And it's like, I think you're sort of outside of that a bit. The situation that you're talking about is a bit outside of that specific scenario. And as I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I don't know how you account for changes in logic without changing your code, unless you can account for that change in logic by having a checkbox that is that's the flag that changes it to be truthy or falsy or something like that. So like if the person that's actually inputting the data is checking the box to say, yes, it is, we do allow this particular type of loan, or no, we don't allow this particular type of loan, or there's some threshold that says if it's above this dollar amount for this particular line of loan, then we do not allow it, or if it's below, sort of something like that. So it's like you have to, you can only be as specific in your tests as the UI that you're allowing your users to update can be. So that makes it complicated, because it's boy, I don't know. Yeah, it's I'm trying to think of how it's more like an end-to-end test than it is a unit test. And
I think there's really two sorts of tests that we can write.
The other thing I was going to say too is, like, there's that idea of like fuzz testing too. Have you ever heard of that? I think like Spassy talks about that.
Okay.
So it's essentially like you have like happy path tests that you create, and then you have like fuzz tests that are like try to break crap. Like just literally try and break it. Like you should, just take every path that you could possibly take down every avenue, down every road, and make sure I don't get like some exceptions. I feel like
exploratory testing.
Yeah,
QA,
I think they call
people usually do that.
I think they call it fuzz testing. Like it's a thing. Like you can automate fuzz testing though. I'm gonna Google
or mutation testing is kind of similar, but maybe different.
Right, that's the idea.
Yeah, to go and like change things and see what happens. So there's like two kinds of tests that we can write, and I think the easier of the two is to test those business rules. Like when the business rules change, you're changing code, so you're probably changing tests, and theoretically. You're changing the test first to say, okay, this previously said it was okay. And realistically, you're just checking for Boolean switches. Like if you're expecting that given this set of known inputs, that the applicant would either be able to get that loan or not. That's easy enough to test. I think the trickier bit is like testing the actual calculations and the calculated output. That given some known inputs, the output will be this because the variables change in a way that is separate to like the system itself. So if the interest rate, if the repayment amount, if the loan amount is say $40,000 and the interest rate today is 10%, then the repayment amount would be, let's say, $500 a month. Okay. But if the interest rate changes to 9%, the calculation is the same, but you can't really make an assertion against the values because that changes in a variable way.
Yeah, it's right. It's man, that is.
So it's like figuring out what you're actually testing. But we need to make sure that like when we apply all these business rules, that the things that come out the other side are correct at the time that we make those changes. So, maybe you don't test, you kind of just ignore the fact that the variables in the system exist and just say like, given what we know of the world today, with these inputs and these variables, this is the expectation. And so long as those tests keep passing, the expectation and the reality of the system are correct. In production, in the day-to-day usage of the system, when the variables change, of course the values will drift from whatever is in the test, but you know that the calculations are correct.
Yeah, I think you're correct in that, like, what you actually have to test is you have to test that the business rules are being followed. So you would have to test the threshold to say, like, so the example I gave earlier, which was like, okay, given that this is this amount and this is for this particular type of loan, and this is the repayment and this is the interest. If it's above this or if it's below this, then we do or we do not. That's the business rule. That's how we test it. And like we're sort of saying like, here's the edge. Yeah. This is the edge. And like, I'm going to test one on this side of the edge and I'm going to test one on this side of the edge. And as long as those two pass, I can sort of guess or infer that everything in between there should also pass. And then I think you actually could do something like fuzz testing, where you don't necessarily even have to care about what the particular inputs are that are happening. But fuzz testing basically allows you to automatically test it with invalid or random inputs to find bugs or errors or vulnerabilities or things like that. So, if that might be something interesting to look into, because that could essentially account for any type of value that your people would possibly put in. So you could say in any instance, doesn't matter, I should never get a negative repayment value. That should never happen. You know what I mean? And then just like, okay, go to town, try it, see if there's anything you can do that would possibly make that happen. Or, you could put like sort of those sort of guardrails on it and say, these tests here, these are like worst case scenarios. Like it should always return a positive value, and then just start throwing random stuff at it and let it go to town and see if it can break it. And if it can, then like I don't have to wait for that magic instance when they put in something stupid and it breaks. I've tested that in advance. I've tested every possible value plus every possible value they might not think of in advance to see if it will break.
Yeah. And by break, we mean like throws an exception because it's gone out of bounds or something. Sure. Yeah, not like it should always just return true or false. It should never throw an exception or, not know what to do. It should always, if the method is to return true or false, you should, no matter what the inputs are, always return either true or false. It should never throw an exception. Unless the method is specifically guarding for that and throwing an exception in specific circumstances. So yeah, that would be the approach that I think I will take when we start putting these tests in. So this all lives in like an external system that we kind of API out to. Like we manage the system. It's just that this is the last remaining piece of a legacy system that never got pulled into like the new platform. And so the work that I'm doing at the moment is to merge those two galaxies together and see what happens. So
yeah, I think maybe the idea too is like, and I keep saying fuzz testing, I promise it'll be last time. But if you do that, so what you might end up finding too is that you don't have strong enough typing on the inputs as well. So like it might be that is the hero of the day. It's like, no, this must be a positive integer that is represented as greater, as between this value and this value. Like those are the only acceptable values,
Yeah.
and it might be that the fuzzing it actually tells you, well, you don't actually have really good protections on this. There is no typing that's checking for this type of thing. Like
Right.
you're allowing strings in here that are not numeric at all. So it's going to break at some point in the future if you don't fix that. And so maybe that's what it does, is it basically forces you to have strict typing up front so that you can guarantee that your processes downstream are going to adhere to your business rules because you are doing the type checks up front.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think getting the test in place on a per lender scenario for those business rules will be the way to start. And then we just assume that the rest behaves itself, and put tests in when we start hitting those boundary cases in production where, given these inputs, some error, some unexpected state was reached, and then go and write the test specifically to account for that with those inputs. And yeah, I think you're right. Just kind of avoiding testing the actual values is going to be the only way to. There's going to have to be some manual step where we send it out to a review environment and get someone in the business, or even just one of our developers to go through when they're making those changes and hit the API and just be like, okay, given I have all of these inputs, make sure that the outputs match what the manual spreadsheet is. And then that's just going to have to be the degree of testing we do at that time.
Yeah.
Because we have seeders and things like that. But the problem with seeders is there's still a snapshot in time where you've still got users of the system going and updating. Like we've got a UI to go and update these base rates and these things, these variables that get put into the system, so that we don't have to make code changes to support those things. So
yeah, it is hard when like the test is specifically tied to the logic that you have written inside the code. So it's sort of like a validation test, you know what I mean? Where you're not trying to test the framework, but at the same time, it's like, how do I check to make sure that these rules haven't changed? Well, I have to sort of reflect it in my test, the code that I've written. So in my form request, I have that these are the 5 validation rules that are running there. And so in my test, I say, check that these rules are still present. So it's a spell check, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's still there. So if you end up having to change the validation rules, you're going to have to go change the test. I mean, that's sort of what you're saying with like there are manual things per lender that must be checked, just based on like, hey, they send you an email and say, hey, by the way, no, we're no longer doing this type of loan. Okay, well, there's no automated way to say you could do that unless you have a configurable value for every single lender that, you know what I mean? You'd have to basically collapse all of that to say it's generic, it's genericized across the entire lender base. And the thing is, that's actually going to end up being more work than it is to just write the business logic rule and test it, And so you just got to like deal with some pragmatism there too. Like, okay, we're going to solve the problem in the simplest way we can without sort of, turning our brains to mush, making this stuff all the exact same across every single lender.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being a sounding board. I think that'll be the approach that at least we start with. Because like this is an older, like I said, it's just kind of been sitting off to the side because it works and we've had more important things to kind of focus on. But now it's like, okay, that thing is kind of raising some flags in certain pen tests and audits and things like that. It's how do we deal with that? Okay, we pick up all of the code that we need to make that specific functionality work, adapt the system that's using it to use this new stuff, and then at least once it's part of the main app, then it's going to be tested and we can start saying, okay, well, when you make changes here, you now need to write tests for it because there's no more Wild West over there.
Yep. Audits. Are you guys doing SOC 2?
I think it's on the cards. I think we were.
Are you guys doing something else?
Yeah, we do ISO 27001. Like we're.
Oh boy, that's I think harder even harder than SOC 2. I think isn't it?
SOC 2. No. 27000. ISO 27001 is here's the list of stuff that we say we're doing. Whereas SOC 2 is here's the list of stuff we say we're doing and here is the proof that we're actually doing it. Like they can ask you at any time. With SOC 2, the auditor can come in and say like, okay, show me that you're doing this thing. And you have to be able to like show them that you're doing this thing. So whereas 27001, you can kind of say, oh, yeah, that's like a known gap. Like you can just say, this is a known gap and we'll look to address it.
It's an acceptable risk. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I think we've typically called that like SOC 2 type 1 and SOC 2 type 2. So type 1 is like, yeah, we're going to put all the things in place, but we may or may not be doing them, and the SOC 2 type 2 is after you've been audited on the things that you've put in place.
Right.
And so, but boy, is it freaking expensive. It feels like, I feel like we need to change auditors at this point, because it's just every year they keep bumping it up, and it's like, guys, it's literally getting easier and easier for you every year. We're going through the same exact checks, the same exact things. Like we've done in half the time that it took last year. We're doing the same stuff, and so, but every year it's more expensive. So I'm like, maybe we just change it up.
Unfortunately, you either need to find another vendor to do the audits, but in order to keep your certification current, and I would assume keep with contractual obligations or keep certain third parties that you work with, keep working with you, then you've got to keep your certifications up to date.
Yeah, you do. But you can, you basically own your controls. With SOC 2, you say, like, here are the controls that we have in place. And then the auditor is basically just reading through your controls and checking, saying, like, hey, here's the thing that you have in place to control this area. And then, like, are you doing it? So, yeah, GitHub has made it really nice. You have the full history of everything, and then you just have to put rules in place for all your branches to be sure that only certain people can manage, merge stuff. And then, all the automated tests and everything have been super nice. So, like, you can, we're doing static analysis, we're doing unit tests, we're doing feature tests, and like, prove it. Okay, here's every pull request we've done for the last 6 months. You can see that every single one of them has been approved by a developer other than the person who wrote the code, and that, all that's able to be managed easily through GitHub branches and protection rules and things like that. So, it's good stuff. There's tools out there now for people, like, if you're in a startup situation. I know that it feels like some of these startups have just sort of punted on this. And like Fathom Analytics, they're like, nope, we don't do SOC 2. Sorry. Tuple, nope, we don't do SOC 2. It's not something we're interested in. It's like, okay. And the funny thing is, it seems like they've been able to just skate by with it. So, like, they have these huge companies who are like, hey, we want to use Tuple. And they're like, great. And they say, do you guys have SOC 2? And they say, nope. And they say, okay, we're gonna use you anyway. It's like, great. Like, it's just hilarious to me how many they've been able to just say, like, we don't do that. And they're like,
you've got to have this certification. Okay, well, I guess we're not going to be able to have your business.
Yep.
Sorry. And
and so then they have, like, what they do have, though, is they have, like, a security page, like Tuple, and they have a security page where they say, like, here are the controls that we have in place to make sure this is, that we are being careful with the stuff, and here's the entire process of how our architecture works and all that. And it's like, I think then people look at it and say, like, well, that's actually easier to read than a SOC 2 would be. Sure, okay, let's do that.
Yeah,
we're
good. Yeah, and it's good because, like, in the case of Fathom Analytics, so their plans start at what, $10 a month, $20 a month. Like, for $20 a month, I am not going to go through your arduous, vendor onboarding process. Like, either you pay $20 a month and you get what you get. Yeah, the procurement stuff. Either you pay $20 a month and you get what you get, or, like, go somewhere else. That's fine.
Right.
So, yes. Unlike Laravel Cloud, who is doing all of that process.
Yeah.
And, you can't really skirt that one, can you?
Right. So what I was going to say, though, is there are companies, one called Sprinto, which is actually pretty cool. And if you basically, it's an express process to do SOC 2.
Right.
So they will help you get set up. So, like, that SOC 2 type 1 I was talking about, they will say, like, hook up your architecture provide, like, who's hosting your infrastructure.
Yeah.
AWS. Great. Okay. Here's what you need to do. Give us a auditing permission, and we're going to go audit all the rules and everything. Oh, yep. Looks like you need to have CloudWatch turned on for this. You need to make sure this bucket's encrypted. You need to do this and that. Yep. And you just go resolve the things. And then it says, okay, great. Do you have a policy for this? No. Do you want to use ours? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
here's
please.
a policy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they make it so, who's your version control provider? GitLab, GitHub, which one? GitHub. Okay, great. Give us permission. Oh, looks like you don't have branch rules turned on for this. Go ahead and turn branch rules on. Looks like you don't have tests automated tests running for this. You need to fix that. You need to turn on 2FA for all the people who have access to this. Here's this user who doesn't. Like, it just does all of that for you. And so what used to be, a $50,000 investment to get some company to come in and tell you what you need to do, and not even have them really do all that stuff. They would say basically to you, you need to run Scout Suite on your AWS stuff. Now, we're not going to tell you how to do that. You just need to figure that out. No, this company literally does it for you, and it's talking about like maybe like a $6,000 to $7,000 investment as opposed to $50,000. So now that only gets you the type 1. And they help you get set up, but then you have somebody come in and do the auditing of it, and they still partner with people who will actually do it for a lot cheaper than these organizations who have been doing it the old school way for forever do. Because literally you get a portal where they go in and say, yep, check. All the green boxes are good. You're done. Like, because you can prove it. They've already done all the testing for you. And so it's really good. Sprinto. Check that out if you're going to do that SOC 2 stuff. And if your if your compute stuff is being used in one of the major providers. It makes it really easy to check those boxes.
Nice. Sweet.
Yeah. Indeed. Right. We're at 30 minutes, my friend.
I think that'll do.
I think that will do.
Good one.
Absolutely. All right, folks. This was episode 172, I believe. Find show notes at northmeetsouth.audio/172. Hit us up on Blue Sky or at Twitter at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, or at North South Audio. And of course, if you like the show, please feel free to rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be absolutely incredible. Folks, we are both going to Laracon this year. So if you have not yet bought your ticket, you should definitely do so. Save us a seat at the restaurant you go to. Shoot us a text. Hit us up. And we'll be sure to come join you. Love to see you there.
Great. See you all in 2 weeks. Also, this is episode 171.
171. Sorry, folks. All right, everybody. Well, sounds good. See you later, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.